What is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hey, we're back after a brief unscheduled hiatus last week. We've got 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery to talk about today. And before we get going, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm Ren from Ren Rants.
Howdy, so sorry, clockwise, what am I doing?
I'm Gannon from my channel called Gannon.
I'm Robbie Sherman from Conversations with Robbie Sherman.
All right, so we've got a couple of episodes to deal with here. We'll start with Whistle Speak. I think we have the least amount to talk about on this one. Do you think that the race that Tilly and Burnham are going through is a callback to season 1 where she's helping Tilly train for the command program?
Oh. I didn't, but I think you're right. That's amazing. Look at her and how her endurance running paid off.
Yeah, I think the moment where she actually turned out to be more adept at running than Michael in the race, I think that was when it might have been like a true callback.
Well, Michael hasn't exactly been getting her cardio and beaming everywhere.
True.
Yeah, gotta get those steps in.
Oh god, that beaming stuff is wrecking havoc on everyone's metabolism. No one's getting any exercise anymore. It's like a Jetsons community or something. No one walks anymore.
It's like the 32nd century version of doom scrolling. Like, everybody doom scrolls on shorts right now, but in the 32nd century, we're just going to beam everywhere. We're not even going to use our legs.
Hello, Norman. I got Gannon here for you, so if you want to bitch at him about giving this one a 1 on his review last week.
The B word, Dustin. Really? We are on a public forum.
I didn't want to bitch about this episode, but I feel like I had to, man. It's like just a complete copy of another episode we have already gotten, but worse. Like, that's how I feel about it.
That's where I mostly don't agree with you. I mean, yes, it's like a religious ceremony. And to catch up everybody else, you're talking about the Voyager episode, whose name escapes me.
It's called Sacred Ground.
That one.
Yeah, I know what you were talking about, the one with the bodies.
Most people hate that. And I find it to be a fascinating look into religious stuff through a Trek lens, which it doesn't do that often.
I think it's a perfectly fine episode to watch when I'm watching 24 episodes of Voyager in a season. I feel like it complements the other episodes pretty well. For this one, it felt like literally the exact carbon copy, except that nobody was really challenging their beliefs or their faiths like Janeway did in that episode. I feel like there was one person on the ship that was doing that, and that was Culber, exploring his mind and scanning his brain and having Stamets tell him that just allow your brain and your existence to remain a mystery. You don't have to have everything solved out. That was the one character in the episode who was having their faith and their beliefs challenged, but Michael was just not really challenged by anything in the episode, and she broke the Prime Directive on a whim, and there was no drama around the Prime Directive breaking. There's just a lot of things that soured the episode for me. I really did feel like it was a lot like Sacred Ground, because they were doing trials on a really more religious society. And the thing where I felt like I was cheated is because in the 90s, these writers could come up with 3 slightly entertaining trials for Janeway to do. But I felt like just them doing a single cinnamon challenge race was lazy.
I don't know if I agree. I mean, the father had his beliefs challenged and basically had to decide whether he would believe the empirical offered by Burnham and open the door, or whether he was going to maintain just his pure belief in the gods and the sacrifices and let his child die. And so he had that very visible crisis of faith. He even almost opened the door before Burnham came, but wasn't convinced that he should. So I thought that was kind of interesting, was it sort of like flipped it, where before it was, Janeway having her beliefs questioned, but I thought it was interesting that he also had to find a way to like live with the empirical and also the spiritual at the same time. I mean, it wasn't an amazing episode or anything, but I thought it was serviceable and I liked it. I didn't hate
But
it.
okay, so if they can do that for a supporting character for one episode, why couldn't they do that for our regular characters for the last season of the show? That's the problem with that. Like, I do agree with you on all your points. Like, that actually is a good setup to that character, gives them something to resolve. But our characters, because this is one of the last times we're going to get to have with them. I think it's a part of the problem with this episode. For me, it feels slight in a way that a season finale episode shouldn't.
Well, to be fair, when they originally made it, they didn't know it was going to be a season finale episode.
Okay,
Or a series
yeah.
finale episode.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's true. You're completely right. I was wrong about that. Like, he was having his beliefs challenged, but I guess I it's one of those moments where I just didn't really like the supporting cast characters, or I feel like they didn't do a good enough job, or it wasn't impacted. It felt like for one of the things that creates the disconnect is I really want this treasure hunt of theirs to be fun. And this is just kind of the last thing I would want to do on a treasure hunt, is arrive at this planet and do the cinnamon challenge run. Also, if you guys take the episode and you take all of the clips of them running, it's a lot. It's kind of embarrassing how a lot these actors are kind of doing this little cringy run to cover screen time when they could just have these cast members talk to each other. Like, are we really paying these people by the word, like they're newspaper article writers? We can have Culber or Sonequa say a couple more things. We don't need to be running this much. Also, I know you guys don't agree with me that, one challenge is fine, but the only thing keeping you from life and death is a single run through the woods. This is a challenge that I feel like we could give to middle schoolers and they could conquer it. The kids doing the pacer test. You guys remember the pacer test? I feel like the kids who could do 70 laps in the pacer test can easily get done with this challenge and kill themselves. I just don't like the challenge at all. It is terrible. It is not worthy of a death ritual, and it's just bad writing.
I agree with that. I think some kind of like arduous trek with like perils where they would have had a chance to like bond a bit more would have been really good. Like, I did like the bit where Tilly like shares the water, but I do agree that just like a thirsty run through the woods is definitely like.
If you were to have me make this believable, you would also have the people who are failing the race really feel bad about it. Like they're almost not getting the opportunity to meet with their god. Also, I don't know if they explicitly stated how often they do the race. It seemed like it's an annual thing for like a yearly monsoon. But I mean, what if it was like every 3 years and they treated it like the Olympics and killing yourself was truly an honor? I did not get any type of actual mandate or feeling from the ritual. It's a terrible ritual. Why would you do this? I would just chill, stay at home. And everybody in the episode was like, you don't have to do it. You could stay home. You don't have to meet with the gods in the race. Okay, then I won't.
Yeah. It is also kind of funny because you do have to wonder like where they started the sacrifices. Like, did someone just get shut in there by mistake and die and then it rained and they're like, oh, that's how that works. Okay.
Well, I even mentioned a denobulin if you're not going to show me like a denobulin for a single fucking second. Excuse my French, but it's just like these scientists and their trials that they created really, that's the part that makes me sad about this season. It should be a lot better of a treasure hunt.
I agree with you 100%, Gannon. I didn't find this fun. That's not the adjective I'd use for this. I found it just kind of tedious. and silly. Like this was not what I was expecting out of an episode of Discovery at this point. And it feels goofy in a way that it hasn't felt since maybe the first season. And I feel like I could really take that a whole hell of a lot more seriously than this little cinnamon challenge we got going on here. There's no tension to it. When people drop out of the race, it's not like they die or anything. No, like somebody comes up with a blank that's like, oh, let's get you to the water tent. You know, it'll be okay. I don't feel any tension from that whole sequence. And then it leads into like what basically amounts to a war track for them, where it's just like a wall coming down. I don't know. This episode has no tension in that part of it. And then the personal touches where they're trying to deal with personal relationships feel slight as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Overall, I don't feel for anything in this. And I mean, we've already established that they didn't know that this was the final season going into it. So if I didn't know that, I would think that, oh, hey, all right, we're bookending the series. We're going back to season 1 and Burnham and Tilly doing a run together. Okay, cool. But overall, since it wasn't meant that way, for one, and yeah, there's not enough here to keep me interested. Yeah, I partially agree with you there.
It's just a thirsty run. So silly. Oh man.
So let's change the topic on this one just a little bit. Where do you think Kovich gets the 21st century legal pad, and what do you think the nature of the Infinity Room is?
He time traveled for it. He's got to time travel for it.
I don't know if he specifically time travels. I bet he used to do a lot of time traveling back in his day. It would be cool, I think, maybe if he was a displaced veteran of the Temporal War.
Oh, interesting.
That'd be cool. But I think he uses this room just because he's an old guy and he likes to intimidate people, and like he likes having the Infinity Room. So he's like that dude from Invincible. Have you guys seen Invincible?
Oh yeah,
the cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
They have an Infinity Room in that show too, and there's like an old intimidating guy character named Cecil, and he's like the U.S. government's top dog. So I think he does it to be intimidating. He likes being scary.
It is such a thrill for me whenever David Cronenberg pops up again. I'm so excited. And it's always kind of slight because, let's face it, he's pretty old. He can't be doing any action, and he just kind of has to talk. But he brings so much presence to the show in a way like not many other actors do. He has such an intimidating body of work as a filmmaker, and for him to be this very kind of in and out of time character that is probably time traveling and getting his information that way, it does a lot for me.
He's so shady. I suspect him so much. I can't wait. I hope we find out more about him. I can't wait.
Yeah, that will be one of the biggest missed opportunities in New Trek, short of ditching Laris at the end of Picard.
I don't like Laris. I'm sorry. I don't like Laris.
What?
I'm sorry. I don't really like how there was so many great love interests for Picard over the years for them to just create this strange Romulan woman that comes out of nowhere that's like his housekeeper. And then also something that's strange with Laris is that her husband just blips out of existence and dies off screen between seasons, and she's like, well, we Romulans, we like to honor our lovers by fucking somebody harder afterwards. So I don't like Laris at all, and I'm glad that in the final season they left it open-ended and they didn't really explicitly say whether he was still in a relationship with her. But I do like Laris in that she's a character that taught Picard how to love again, and I think that's what her value is to me.
I mean, it's fine. Go ahead, Rob.
I just wanted to say I never thought about like that relationship having a cucking dynamic until you put
it's not cucking. He's dead. He's dead. He's gone.
It's like cucking for
but
me
it's
off
still.
the grave.
I was still so caught off guard. But they wrote that dialogue in. She literally said that to Picard. Like she said that on screen.
Boy.
Yeah, I can appreciate like that there are plenty of choices for Picard to have a relationship with before Laris, but the fact that they don't even show her or tie anything up at the end of that season after that's a thing that we've done literally every season. Missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity. Just like if we don't get more about Kovic, it's going to be a huge missed opportunity.
She didn't show up at all in the third season. Not even a single scene.
No, just the beginning. I mean,
Oh,
we didn't come back to her at the end.
Okay.
She was there for moral support and cleaning.
Yep.
To take care of the estate.
Yep. Somebody's got to have the space adventure, and it isn't her. Let me tell you.
Okay, Norman, that's I like that. I like that a lot. What did you think about the scene with Culber and his holograndma?
I thought that was kind of cool.
I thought it was sweet.
I thought it was kind of sweet.
I made a comment in my review how I think it's actually bad therapy, how you can easily become a hollow-addicted freak like Barkley doing this.
Yeah.
Like, if you had a dead relative, you could just talk to him way too much, but...
It kind of reminds me of the Black Mirror episode, Be Right Back.
I haven't seen too much of Black Mirror.
Oh, so in that one, a woman's fiance or husband dies in like a car accident, and so there's a company where they can basically grow you an android that has their like personality based on all of their online posts and stuff, and all of and their like appearance and all of the video and stuff. But at the end of the episode, she realizes it's not enough of him, but she also can't get rid of it because it is still too much of him, so she keeps it in the attic.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gut-wrenching.
I haven't seen too much of Black Mirror, but I really like Love, Death, and Robots.
I think if you like Love, Death, and Robots, you'd probably like Black Mirror. It's interesting. I would say skip the first episode or two until maybe after you've gotten a feel for the show and then go back because they're quite extreme. But anyway, Be Right Back basically like ruined a lot of the Star Trek holograms for me because now every time someone brings a hologram of like a dead person back, I'm like, oh, this is a problem.
I've only seen the Star Trek episode of Black Mirror, and I like that a lot. I think they're making a sequel to it, they announced.
Oh, hell yeah. I don't have any pictures, but I cosplayed from the USS Callister.
I enjoyed the scene, but let me tell you, I was so creeped out when like she starts touching his face. Like I just started thinking about like what that might feel like. Okay, when we're in that type of holodeck thing, can they actually like touch you like it feels like skin when they touch you? I've never understood if that's how it goes throughout all of Trek, and I just feel like there's a complete like loss of touch. So when they do it, it doesn't feel like a person is touching you. I don't know. The whole dynamic of it makes me uncomfortable. Like it made me shudder when I was watching it. Like, are you just dealing with a simulacra? You know that, like, it isn't really touching me, but thinks they're touching me.
It's extra weird with all the times that holograms have become self-aware too. You're like, okay, all right. But at the same time, like, if I had the option, I would still probably do it because I'm weak and foolish.
Like, yeah, that's a thing that's been like clogging my love of Star Trek actually for a little while, because I keep thinking about how they romanticize these holodeck suites, but they don't actually give us enough information on how they feel and stuff. Like I know they have things that block pain receptors and stuff, you know, and things that like keep you from getting hurt. But I still don't know if that actually feels like you're touching a real person. If you're with a real person, they don't go that far into it on the holodeck addiction one. The couple of times they've done the holodeck addiction thing.
They also eat on the holodeck a lot, which makes me ask the question, like, so is food from the replicator being like just replicated in the holodeck somehow and they just never talk about it? Or are they just pretending to eat like pretend photons and force field food when they're eating on the holodeck?
This is something that we could look at for an entire show by itself, because what you just said is what I always thought, because the first time they ever bring the holodeck into play, or somewhere in season 1 of TNG, they tell you that it's similar to transporter and replicator technology. So you think, oh, well, some stuff is replicated, some isn't. That's how you get some of like the organic matter and stuff. But then there's episodes like, oh, I'm trying to remember the episode in DS9 where Odo finally hooks up with Kira because of Vic Fontaine, and he's like, you know, and Odo's like, I don't drink, and he's like, it's holographic booze, like, so I think sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Either way,
I bet you have to order room service, like you have to like go to the panel and ask for the replicated food, like make that shit real. I feel like you have to do that, otherwise it's gonna be fake holographic food.
Because then there's the time Moriarty, as she puts it, crams Pulaski full of crumpets. So,
Oh, I love Pulaski.
and that
She's
seems
so
like
underrated.
she was literally full. So yeah, that's why I was like, this is something you could go back and forth on and look at all the instances of it, and it's more of a case of every writer, I think, interprets it a little differently. So
You're talking about how we can have a whole episode talking about you know, that technology, but I could easily have 3 episodes talking about how much Pulaski's the goat. The goat.
I am fucking with you there.
Dude, she's the goat,
I
and it's a
agree.
crime how like I liked her more in 1 season than Beverly in 6.
I love Beverly, but
Mm.
Pulaski's just special.
She's just so great. She's the first, like, I think I don't know if this is true, but she was the first character that I noticed that was truly like a senior character that was a complete badass.
A tough older lady badass character will just never not work for me. I know it's a trope and I love it literally every single time I see it. Like, I want more.
She's did so much actual doctoring. I never I don't think I've ever seen a doctor that had more conviction than her in Star Trek.
Goddamn love Diana
Also, the
Muldaur. And
way
she
her
basically
relationship
dropped
with
out of
Data
acting
Drew
after
is
this.
the bomb. So great. Love a character overcoming their prejudice.
I would love for them to, if they were to make another series around that timeline, whether it maybe be a prequel TNG thing or slightly after TNG, like we need to have Pulaski come back in some way. Maybe have like a young Pulaski.
Hell yeah.
And we could see her like smashing Riker's dad in college or something. Just anything.
Maybe in
like,
the Section 31 movie. That's going to take place in that time period somewhere.
Dr. Pulaski's such a dog.
God, I just have no want for that Section 31 movie.
No,
it seems like
really?
Cool. I just have no like interest in it whatsoever. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's giving me anything.
I think it's the
wanted
most
out
exciting
Star Trek
project
for
that
a while.
they've besides
Really?
Strange New Worlds.
That's upcoming anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
I admit,
like
Yeah, I don't.
I'm less excited about it because I know it's gonna, like, by its nature, be the dark side of Star Trek. But
See,
also,
I just worry.
tell you,
Sometimes the Empire
I just
just has to
worry-
win.
Look, I just worry it's going to fall into edgy bullshit real easily. And then in a few years, we're going to look at it and be like, yeah, you know, it was just kind of there. You know, they wasted a good actress or something like that. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. We haven't seen a shred of it. But I don't know. I'm just not excited about it. I don't know why.
All right, so we just got a couple more questions to wrap up this first episode here. And here's just a kind of a fun one. What do you think about Book playing essentially a virtual boy game that would be considered retro today?
oh, I appreciate it. I like old things. I think in any time period, even in the 32nd century, they're still going to be appreciating old relic stuff like this.
Tom Paris liked old cars. I don't think it's a stretch for people to like very, very, very old games.
Old
The
stuff is
old
cool.
is a novelty.
Yeah, I've built whatever personality I have as a stupid white guy in this world off of old bullshit. So I have no like problem on a character level with somebody in the future still wanting to mess around on an Atari console. But at the same time, like I also just have we had any form of character like shading that has shown they're into this? type of video game, type of ancient technology? Like, is this a payoff for something in the past or something? That's where it gets me on a character level. I don't think this person has ever shown that they're interested in such things on any level.
I don't mind it as like a little character moment. I don't think everything has to tie back into the larger narrative. I think it's fun to just be like, oh, this guy likes old video games. Cool.
Yeah. People have quirks. I have quirks.
I think it was kind of sad how like they made more of an effort to give us lore on the Hemolians or whatever they're called in Whistle Speak. And
Hallomites, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Whatever they're called. They gave them more lore in 1 minute than they gave to Quajon in 2 seasons. Like, Quajon, I only got lore after they blew up the planet, and then Book had to, like, reminisce about a couple things about his planet. And something that I've also been thinking about with Quajon, and this might get me in trouble for saying this, but does anybody feel like maybe they blew up Quajon so they didn't have to explore another planet that seemingly is just like Pan-African themed, like in Code of Honor?
To be fair, we've only ever seen Book, his brother, and his nephew, though, so we don't really know what the makeup of the complete planet is.
I know, but it is kind of like Pan-African themed. It's like Quajon, and then when he was talking to Leto, he was like, Wahi, Leto, Wahi. And I'm sorry if this gets me in trouble, but that doesn't sound like, you know, indigenous. That sounds like African sounding to me. Maybe that'll get me in trouble. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, either way, it's explored so much better than like Code of Honor ever was. So I think it's okay.
I don't think it is though, because they just blow up the planet, and then the only thing we really see is like Book running through the woods with his nephew. I didn't learn too much about them besides that they use like bows and arrows. I think in season 3, they use laser bows.
Yeah, it would have been nice if the planet got more development so that it's more devastating when it's lost beyond just us watching Book be devastated.
Mm-hmm. I wish we could have been devastated with Book and like not just be annoyed that he's just doing whatever Tarka says for all of season 4.
Yeah, that is 100% true. I thought it was interesting in this episode that I wanted a little bit more about the 3 genders, because I mean, is it just like we have here on Earth today, but yet they knew just by sensor scans that there are 3 genders? So is it just a they because you want to be a they, or is it that there is some kind of biological, you know, need like with the cogenitor thing in Enterprise or whatever?
That is a good question.
They just did not give us the information to find out.
Though overall, I mean, you're absolutely right that we got more in like minutes of random dialogue about these.
Yeah, we do know more about their culture.
And it's also not really a culture that, I said this in my review, it's not really a culture that's ultimately deserving of all that spotlight, because it really does seem like a copy and paste culture. And I said in my review that these cultures are more created in Star Trek to explore Prime Directive violations. So like in the TNG movie, I know that they were like advanced. And then there was also that one where Data went haywire. And there was who watches the Watchers? Who watches the Watchers? They were basically just kind of looked like altered Romulans and everything. And I feel like it's just like you don't really need to have this whole moment exploring the species when really the events that happen down interacting with the species is really where we're supposed to get the drama, the tension, and the knowledge.
Or at least it should be, which kind of isn't what we got here. It wasn't an interesting thing that we got, like with Who Watches the Watchers, where it was just, it wouldn't have mattered if we'd learned a single thing about the Mintakans.
Also, sorry, last thing I'll say is that we're never going to have Michael reprimanded for breaking the Prime Directive, and it happened so fast. It happened very quickly, and there wasn't really any dramatic tension for her doing it. She made the decision seamlessly, like, no, there's no other option. I'm going to break it.
She also broke it so hard, like so hard. Like she gave them I would argue so much more information than they maybe needed.
Yeah.
That leads
Like,
me
yes,
to the last question that we have on this one, and that's on a scale of Wesley Crusher crushing flowers to Picard content to let the Barallans die, how justified is Burnham's Prime Directive breaking decision?
I think it's really justified. But like Ren is right. She did not have to like tell them that much and completely shatter their entire scope of life in existence. Because was it in Who Watchers the Watchers where Picard beamed that lady up, and
Yep.
then in Homeward, with Worf's brother, that dude literally killed himself when he found out about the greater universe. So I think that yeah, to save Tilly, and it's really a small settlement of people. I know it's like the butterfly effect, where small things really fuck up an entire area of space, but I feel like the weighing the risk versus saving Tilly and the away team is worth it.
My other question is, so she said they could teach them how to maintain the technology. With what? Like, are they giving them Federation tech to do this maintenance? What other maintenance could they possibly achieve with like the level of technology that they have on the planet? Like, if it's
Ren,
just a matter of beep boop press buttons, I guess I could see that. But like
I,
maintenance sounds like you need like tools.
why
yeah,
didn't they just
yeah,
fucking fix the
yeah,
planet? Like, why did they only repair
yeah.
one tower instead of all five? Like, you've already told these people about the United Federation of Space Galaxy. You've already fixing one tower. Just fix at least one or two extra towers. You have a spaceship with a transwarp drive. You're the most technologically advanced thing for miles. Please just fix an extra tower to release these people from their hell.
Yeah,
I
Norman.
think episode.
No,
I just
go
want
ahead.
to say I think these Prime Directive episodes get a little old because it's always like some awkward humor where they show up pretending to be from another part of the planet, another sect or whatever, and they find out about the terrible thing that happens when you go through the ritual. And it's so hack. Like I wish they had done more with this because I feel like I've already seen this plot so many times in Star Trek that it's bowled over into uninteresting cliche on every level.
Well, worse than that, like Norman saying, those other episodes were kind of designed to be a Prime Directive centered episode. This one, it just happens to be part of what happens. And
We're
yeah,
on
it
our
just doesn't
puzzle
pay
hunt.
off.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. It made it feel like it was supposed to be like part of the narrative, but it really was just kind of like blown past.
Also very poor due diligence on Michael and Tilly's part for not trying to learn more about the ritual before participating.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think Burnham and Tilly are just kind of shiftless throughout the whole episode. Oh, well, I guess we'll do that. I guess that's how we should do that. It's not like we've ever been in a situation like this before. I guess we should do that. And there's no there's no character motivation that has a sense of educated movement about it. And that's the worst part about the episode to me.
All right, let's take this stuff and give it an out of 10. For Whistle Speak, I'm giving it a 3.5. It's not the worst of the worst. It's not a Spock's brain, but man, I just kind of don't care by the end of the episode other than thanks for saving Tilly.
I'll give it a 5.5, I guess, which is for me pretty middle of the pack average because I'm a soft touch with the ratings. It's fine. It's serviceable. I think it had its moments, but it definitely isn't great in the scheme of larger Trek, and I would definitely say it's not even great in the scheme of Discovery or this season. So, it's fine. It's a fine episode. B-.
I think when I first reviewed it, I gave it a 1 because I was very angry and jaded, and now I'm going to increase that to a 2 because I want to be nice. But this episode upsets me because it makes me feel like a hater with how much I internally want to criticize it, and I don't want to be a huge hater. But I feel like this is below standards for a Star Trek episode, especially in a season so short. If you're going to only give us 10 episodes, all 10 should be like at least entertaining, if not bangers. And then you also compare that to other shows that are successful and use this drama format where we're only getting 10 episodes. Like everybody should just go and watch Shogun recently is a perfect example,
good.
because that is a show which perfectly does the drama format right. And I think that this final season of Discovery, and in fact the past 2 seasons as well, are just kind of a failed attempt at appeasing Star Trek and also trying to do this drama format, which Strange New Worlds is a lot more successful at doing. So 2 for me.
I'm going to subtract a point from yours, Ren, give it a 4.4. And the whole reason I'm going to do that is because everyone is doing their job to the best of their abilities. I feel like giving it lower than that suggests that the cast and crew aren't putting their 10 cents in. Look, it was hard to actually remember this episode, and more pieces of it started floating into my head as we were talking. And that's not a good sign as a Star Trek episode. Like, generally, I'm better about keeping one of those Star Trek episodes in my head. This feels so lightweight, and it doesn't have great payoffs to its setups. And once again, I think the cast and crew are doing their finest, and everything looks fine. The acting is good. Even the cinematography looks really good. Given what we're doing. But I don't recommend it to Star Trek fans. I don't recommend it as a glimpse of Trek for non-Trek fans. It really feels like a slow episode in what should be a very fast-paced send-off. I feel like they should have looked at the script and went, no, we can find another way to enrich our puzzle hunt to let this go out with a bang. Like this really kind of sags things down.
You know what's sorry. Last thing I'll say about this episode too is that of all the reasons for them to like spam going to slums and space casinos, like this would be a perfect season to go to a slum or a space casino and do an adventure.
Oh.
But they've just been overused in all previous seasons. Like I swear in Picard, and we've gone to a space casino in Discovery too, of the space barge. So like I don't know, there are so many better places for a space hunt.
I'd rather have alien go-go dancers than whatever this shit is. Like, dear God.
It's definitely forgettable, I would say. And I watched it this morning, and I lost pieces of it between finishing the episode at 9:30 and talking to you guys at 11.
Yeah, I literally only had one question going into this, and then I went to get screenshots and was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I could ask this and this and this. And, well, it added up to at least more than half an hour. So great.
Good job.
We've got another whole episode to talk about.
The Breen.
Erigah.
Green leavable.
So let's start on a couple easy ones. What do you think about Reno being... Do you think it's convenient that Reno is the person that knows the most about ancient texts, even though it turns out she doesn't?
I'm fine with literally any excuse to give Reno more screen time, and I do love the idea of her being a jack of all trades who's kind of dabbled in a bunch of stuff and then padded her resume with it. That's so iconic. That's perfect for her. That's just on brand for her character. I loved it. It was great.
I agree. I'm not even going to say anything different. That's just exactly how I feel. You could have Reno scrubbing the transporters while talking. I don't care. Just is a great character. And I think everybody who watches the show, even the haters, enjoy Reno.
She's the best.
I definitely prefer her on this show compared to her stand-up. I feel like it's a lot more impactful to have her be very terse around a group of characters that's very positive and optimistic. Yeah, I think it works really well.
Yeah, I think it's convenient, but yeah, like Ren said, it's just give me any excuse to get Tig Notaro in there. I want a whole series of just her.
I want a
Oh,
Reno spinoff so bad. Or
she
just give
works
me
so.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say she works so good as an actor when she has people to bounce off of, like the inflections that she gives things. They feel so pat and like perfect in the moment. And whenever I've tried to watch her as a stand-up comedian, she doesn't have anyone to bounce off of, and there's just an audience laughing at. It feels like a little much, but as an actor in doses, it hits really hard.
I haven't really watched her stand up, but I did watch her show One Mississippi, and she was so good.
Oh,
Like,
I didn't like
yeah.
that show.
I need to see
I didn't
that.
like things about it, but I loved her in it.
Now, is the second season called Two Mississippi?
Should have been.
I almost went to see her stand. She came about an hour away a couple months ago, but tickets sold out before I could actually get two that were adjacent to each other. So, but I do like her a lot. She is an excellent person. And like the bouncing off thing, I think one of my favorite things about Discovery is when she and Stamets go at it, and something productive always comes out of it. But the lesbian and the gay dude going after each other, it just something about it just works so fucking well. So the fun follow-up question to that is, what do you think goes into a 7 of limes?
I was thinking about this, and they definitely put genuine, 7-Up, or like a really good classic lemon soda. The alcohol is whatever Seven's favorite is. It's topped off with a candied lime around the rim, with maybe like a topper like sugar or something, or salt, and maybe one other ingredient. And that's how I would make the 7 of limes.
I would drink that. That sounds delicious.
Some genuine Borg nanoprobes.
There's a guy on TikTok and Shorts who makes a whole bunch of drinks inspired by fictional characters, and I just saw a cool Darth Vader one today where it was like red grenadine, and then there was a shot at the bottom with a darker dark cherry mixture. Ooh. And he released it, and it created this cool effect. So maybe he'll make a 7 of limes.
Nice.
Excellent.
So the next question is, so is this obviously then a drink that she's either learned or made up here in the 32nd century? And like, does Captain 7 of the Enterprise G really, like, she's got that much clout that she's,
I think she's got most of her clout from Voyager, later? Right? It doesn't really matter what she does on the Enterprise G, because the Voyager has so much clout in the Star Trek universe. Like, everybody knows Voy.
I now imagine that there's a whole notable captains or ships commemorative plate series within the Star Trek universe now, thanks to Lower Decks, and I could completely see them all having a signature cocktail. I wonder what Picard's signature cocktail would be. Something with Earl Grey.
Ew.
One of those weird.
You could probably find a way to make it good, like some kind of Earl Grey not Moscow Mule. What am I thinking of? White Russian.
It would be one of those weird drinks that you mix with wine. Probably some type of spiced wine. I don't know.
I'm not a heavy drinker, and this is all just kind of making my stomach twirl.
I'm also not a big drinker, but I would drink the 7 of limes as described by Gannon.
Sounds interesting.
It does sound tasty.
Okay, we got a bunch more serious topics here, because this is a pretty serious. This is like one of the most seriously serious episodes of Disco in a while. So here's just kind of a weird continuity question. Which last time the Breen entered Federation space is Vance talking about? Is he talking about the Dominion War or during Lower Decks trusted sources?
What did they do in trusted sources? Remind me.
They went to that. This was, and it was actually Admiral Buenamigo that set the whole thing up. That this was one of the missions he sent them on so that they would purposely fail and then let the get the Texas class to like take over.
Oh man, I don't
And so
even-
there was this group of Breen that like they pretty much destroyed a city that they beamed down to. So when they say about Tilly later
Okay.
says like the last time the Breen came, they destroyed an entire city, and you don't know if they're talking about San Francisco or this city, which technically would be the last time
I
in
think
trusted
you have
sources.
to be talking about Lower Decks because did they get to San Francisco in Deep Space Nine? I don't think they touched down on
Yes.
Earth.
Well, they didn't touch down, but they destroyed at least a good chunk of the city.
Oh man,
We saw the
terrible Star
aftermath.
Trek fan.
We saw the aftermath in The Changing Face of Evil, one of those last like 7 episodes in the end of DS9.
Okay, I'm gonna educate myself real quick.
So it's either that or by the official timeline, it would be the Lower Decks episode would be the last time. Though those could be considered rogue because it was like all set up by Buenamigo. We're not quite sure. I thought he was talking about the Dominion War, and then Scott brought up in chat, like, is he talking about trusted sources? Like, oh god, that is the last time we actually saw the Breen on screen.
So how are we defining Lower Decks? Is it considered an alternate universe from the
No, it's in
Discovery
the Prime
universe?
universe.
Okay.
I don't think
Okay.
there is an alternate universe in Star Trek besides the shitty Kelvin movies.
Yeah, the
Okay.
first one was pretty
Well,
good.
Mirror universe.
I will fight- I
There's a
will
lot of
fight that
universe. There's a lot of universes. You got the
Oh.
Mirror universe. You got the Confederation universe. You got the million little micro universes that Worf jumps to in the season 7 TNG episode.
Yeah, you know what I
Right.
mean, but like the universes
riddled
that we as
multiverses.
fans like actually care about, right? Like the
Right.
prime timeline. Sorry,
Yes.
prime timeline. What happens in the prime timeline? That's the
Yes.
universe I'm talking about.
Yeah,
That
that's
prime
nice.
timeline consists of what Dustin is saying, like infinite number of universes, right? But I guess I'm just talking about like prime timeline events.
I'm a little confused. I couldn't make it through that musical episode of Strange New Worlds. It gave me a headache. I had to turn it off. I'm so sorry to anybody who did a good job on that episode, but it just gave me a headache. Like I had to stop
Yeah.
watching it.
And that opens the door to that. We now know that there is a universe that governs itself by the laws of musical theater.
Oh God, I'm so glad I don't live there. I'd die. I wouldn't be able to survive. You know, everybody would be singing at me, and I'd just have to stand there being all stern.
I still feel like that's one of those universes like in Everything Everywhere All at Once, where it's like, well, most universes don't evolve life and nothing's really happening. I feel like that musical universe would be that, but yeah.
Do you guys? I have a question. Do you guys just like the design for the Breen? Because
Oh,
I like the green jelly one. I think that one is maybe good enough, but I do not like how Locke looks. I think it's just kind of a very J.J. Abrams Kurtzman alien design. It kind of reminds me a lot of the fleshy Klingons, and it also reminds me a lot of like the Kelvin universe designs, like that one female alien with the stripes. And I don't know what the fuck she is supposed to be to this day.
Oh yeah. I don't even remember her name. I hate that fucking movie.
yeah.
She was the best part of it, and I hate that movie.
It's fine. It's not great. But I also feel like there was never gonna be any design after that much time of it being a mystery that would really like give you the impact you want when you unmask them. Like I feel like no matter what they look like it's never gonna compare with the hype of not knowing. So I thought the jelly face was definitely cooler. I think it would have been harder to execute for like actually having a character in that state the whole time. So I see why they have them morph into a more like normal, solidified, just generic humanoid alien face. But yeah, like it's fine.
That being said, I like the new armor. I like
It's
the
great.
design here.
So
The
great.
new yeah. Oh my God, the new armor. Like this makes me think of really good anime when I look at it. Like it's so slick, but it's also intimidating. there's not anything that's like a ridiculous like jut out from it, and it can blend into backgrounds really well. Yeah, I think it looks fantastic.
The shape almost reminds me of like specifically like animated Star Wars, not the CG animated Star Wars. I'm talking like the animated from like the 80s Star Wars.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of like that kind of like weird blockiness, but also somehow like sleek. Like it's a good look. I like it.
Hey, there's some Japanimation merged in there. Don't let them fool you.
Oh, for sure. It also definitely gives me 90s anime vibes. Like
it makes me think of like a Macross or Bubblegum Crisis a lot, like how slick they look. It's great.
The design team on Discovery never fails. The writer's room is a different question.
they're trying.
Hit or miss.
I'd like to believe they're trying. Sometimes you try your hardest and it really doesn't work out.
Brian Fuller.
Discovery does not always hit, but I do feel like we all tend to give old Trek quite a lot of grace considering the number of stinkers there are.
There are
outlandishly bad episodes. I would argue Discovery's worst episode isn't even close to some of the actual
I agree.
worst episodes in the existence.
But I want to be so much kinder to the older Star Trek because they gave me 25 episodes, so it's okay if 3 of them are like, I'm never going to watch that again. But Discovery is like, oh, final season, guys, and we're only going to give you 10. Here you go, brother.
And we're only going to fill in 6 or 7. And that's the thing we were talking about last night. And Robbie got confused when I was like, yeah, 26 episodes. And I'm like, no.
I just don't know.
We're falling into this familiar pattern again where these last 3 episodes, and this one, don't get me wrong, Erigah is the strongest of the 3. But all 3 have just been merely barely serviceable Trek. And if you can't fill 10 episodes, don't even think about giving me 26. Akiva Goldsman might be able to fill 20 or more episodes a season. But no other showrunner has shown me that they have the capability to fill more than 5 episodes yet.
I just don't really... I feel like they've forgotten how to fill an episode with just dialogue and simple events, because all of my favorite Star Trek episodes are just characters that I've learned to really like and admire talking to each other and keeping it real, and then supplementing it with some simple CGI space scenes with shuttlecraft. It doesn't have to be that hard. And that's why I really don't like the Kelvin Timeline movies, is I feel like they're responsible for raising the standard that all Star Trek productions, besides the cartoons, have to be this pseudo drama, movie grade cinema thing, where we always have to be talking like movie characters. And if we're not able to fill that dialogue space with good movie dialogue, then we're just not going to talk at all. And so that's why I feel like we find the Discovery characters yapping a lot, not actually talking like regular human beings, but yapping.
I think part of the problem also the serialization and their obsession with making everything really action heavy. So you don't get any episodes where they get to just chill and breathe. And you hardly ever get an episode that has its own A plot and its own B plot that are both just contained in the episode. Either the A plot or the B plot is always going to be very strictly attached to the big, larger serial thing happening. And then they also feel the pressure to up the stakes every season. So every season it has to be some universe-ending calamity. And so the universe-ending calamity just sucks all the air out of the room. And so it doesn't leave you enough time to just have fun or have the characters dick around in the holodeck or have the characters have a wedding. We better get a Data's Day style wedding episode with Saru, or so help me God, I will burn down Paramount Studios.
Oh, I see. Remember how I was going to tell you guys what was going on with Saru? I was going to tell you guys what was going on.
Yeah.
What do you know?
Please.
So Doug Jones is on the final season of a show that he's been on for 5 years. And instead of actually being on the show, it's more important to him to simply do promotion work, not even acting work, for Hocus Pocus 2. That's what he's doing. That's why he's not here. He's promoting, not acting. They're already done shooting. He's just promoting Hocus Pocus 2. That's what he was doing
I
at
thought
the
that
time.
movie already came out.
Wait, the new.
Well,
wait,
this was like,
wait,
you
would
know,
this
they
be
shot
Hocus
this
Pocus
ages ago.
3,
Oh,
like a
good
new,
point,
a
good
new Hocus Pocus that has not come out yet.
Hocus Pocus 2.
I see what you're saying though, because they shot this like 2 years ago.
Yeah, they
But the-
shot
So-
Discovery.
So
Okay.
okay, I'm just confused because there was the Hocus Pocus in the '90s, and then there was the Hocus Pocus from a couple years ago. So wouldn't
That's
this
what
be like
Gannon's
Hocus
talking
Pocus
about.
3? Oh, so he's promoting an old movie that's already out?
No, I think what Gannon's saying is that in between all of this, that's what he was doing at the time, because this season of
Okay.
Disco
Yeah,
was shot
when they
like
were
2
shooting
years ago.
Disco,
oh my god,
So-
the
okay.
movie was already
Wow,
out,
I'm done.
and he was simply like doing a promotional
see
thing
now.
for that movie that already came out. And so that's why Doug Jones isn't here as much as we want him to be. And then Ren was also spinning. It made me want to say something, but I completely forgot about it now.
I do want to like just put that a little bit of a button on that. It might be way easier on a physical level for him to promote Hocus Pocus 2 than to get in all that makeup to come in and
Yeah.
do Discovery all the time. Like, I would totally like feel for him if he was just like, you know what, guys, this is the last go around. I think I'm just going to come in and do some inserts. You know, it's cool. We've all had fun, right? I'm going to go promote this and not put 6 hours of makeup on my body for days on end.
He was
He
probably actually
did
just
say that in the
contractually
article.
obligated, would be my guess. Because I'm
What'd
pretty
you say?
sure with movies that are that big, you get a contractual obligation to promote it.
Mm-hmm.
So his hands were
Yeah.
probably tied, but I could also
Yeah.
see him being a little tired because the man, like, all of his big roles are prosthetic work roles. Like,
Yeah.
he
Yes.
lives in prosthetics so much. And I've worn some, like, prosthetic makeup. That shit is so hot. It is so hot. It is
It's
not
difficult to deal
comfortable.
with.
And he's under those bright lights with this like whole full body thing going on with like the
Yeah.
hands and the face.
For like
and
12,
the-
16-hour days.
And then
yeah,
again,
that is a lot. And he's old. He's like in
don't
his
care.
60s, isn't he?
I don't care.
I
I
think
want
he's
my
60,
favorite
but yeah.
character from my
Yeah.
show. I don't care. I want him to be here. Like,
I mean,
I'll
I
sympathize
know
with
what's
you,
good.
but I'll only sympathize with you so much, bro. Like, you're one of the last few remaining facets of the show that everybody unanimously loves, and like every other character before that we loved, be it Tilly, Michelle Yeoh's character, they've distanced us from the characters we love, and they've done it again.
Hey, you
It's
have new
weird.
characters like Maul and Locke. Those are
No, I
satisfying,
mean, we
right?
kind of did up until, this week.
I knew it was gonna happen too. I knew it.
Yeah.
I don't believe he's
Yeah.
dead, though. I don't believe he's dead.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna come back. I
Dustin,
think
we
they're
need
gonna
to
use
talk
the
about the
preventative
Breen
tech to
plot
bring him
holes,
back.
though, because Dustin's biggest gripe with this episode is that the Breen aren't scary enough, and they really
Oh
aren't.
my god, I've got like three questions here that add up to all of that. I was just gonna say about like favorite characters. I don't know if I have one left on Discovery anymore. And by that I mean like Tilly was hands down my favorite for the first couple of seasons, and then I liked Book a lot in season 3, and then he could kind of go fuck himself in season 4, and he's okay this season, but I don't know that I have anybody that I'm like drawn to this season.
I'm like annoyed because they got rid of all of the character or so many of the characters that we've been getting to know, and I thought, oh cool. Obviously that means we'll get to know the rest of the bridge crew to fill the space.
And meanwhile, where's OO and Detmer? Like,
The Breen
Jesus.
crew, they do not have
We only-
goals.
We only
Like,
see Reese
you
when we
know,
need to
like,
talk
that
about
were in
Constitution
several
class
episodes,
curves.
You get on screen at all, like
If you watch Discovery too, it's really funny how like you'll just be watching stuff's going on, and then a bridge member will randomly be like, "Oh, this traumatic thing happened to me 10 years ago." It's like that's really all they do. I think Detmer's done that 3 times. Detmer's really bad with it because she had like a dad that had dementia or something. My dad, I remember 10 years ago, he locked himself in a room and he just kept on beating at the door. But
okay,
yeah,
you had your one trauma dump for this season, now your character's done.
oh man, yeah, the bridge crew are really funny when you think about them.
All right.
How
No,
are
go
we
ahead.
feeling about Raynor? I just want to get that out for a second.
I mean, I've been saying all season, like, is he going to get this big turnaround where we like him? And the answer is no, he's not Captain Shaw, where he started out being just a dickhead from Chicago, and now you actually kind of feel sorry for him when he dies. I'm glad we got more about why he's a dick this episode, but I still am not going to care if and when he probably dies by the end of the season.
I like Rayner. I think he's fun. Although I do think Star Trek has definitely overplayed the character with a traumatic genocidal backstory. Like that's, you know, you're never gonna beat Neelix. Like, I'm sorry. They tried, but like he's no Neelix. He's no Shaw. Like he's okay. But I think the actor just is so charismatic that it makes me like him in spite of how objectively, like if I were under Rayner, I would want to punch him in the face. But watching him in the show, I'm like, oh, you silly little guy. You have so many feelings and you don't know what to do about it. Just, aw, buddy.
I totally think the acting is doing the work in anything I like about that character, because I think the actor has like really great ways to phrase like all his dialogue, and whenever he makes a sudden shift and has a realization, it's perfect. Like when he realizes he actually overstepped his bounds with Michael, and he just has that moment where all his ego drops from him, and you see it. Like that worked well on an acting level. I don't think he's like amazing as a character, but I'm definitely having fun with him. And I kind of do like him being a bit of a prickly pear, because the crew of the show is so goddamn positive and happy so much of the time. It kind of drives me a little nuts.
He's a bit of a prickly pear.
I did find it interesting how Burnham tried to relate to him and come down to his level on like, yeah, I kind of did the same thing with the Klingons back in my time, back in my day. Nice cat, Gannon. Nice cat.
She's the best.
Is baby.
Oh,
Look at her little nose.
how does she feel about the character of Rayner? Does she have complicated emotions about the character of Rayner?
You know,
If she wanted to join the show, she has to participate.
Listen, she's been bitching about it to me all week, and I tell her that I kind of like Rayner. I don't think it's too bad. She thinks that there's not enough room to develop a character in 10 episodes, and I have to agree. She really wanted a Kelleran visit. I want anything to do with Kellerans other than just talking about them. I think that, again, I feel like don't want to gas myself up here, but I could come up with a couple of better ideas to use the screen time than we have been doing. Like, what if we went to a Kelleran refugee camp or displaced Kellerans on a world and explored their troubles there? And that is a way to learn more about Rayner's character than literally anything that we've been doing.
Yeah, pull an ensign row with him, have him like give a kid his jacket.
Absolutely, literally. I would love that. What are the Kellerans up to? I want to know.
So, have the Breen become all bark and no bite in the last 800 years? They keep drawing red lines in this episode, lines in the sand that if you cross it, we're gonna fuck you up. And then, like with Locke dying, but did nothing when he died as a consequence.
Yeah, it just I need to be more educated, and this is something that they always want to run from in Star Trek, and they never want to be explicit with it. It's because it really changes episode to episode and storyline to storyline. Is the size of the Federation, their forces, would it be hard for the Breen to straight up just destroy Federation HQ and dip, or would they receive the retaliation of all of the planets and all of the starships in the UFP? Is that dangerous? Is that something they don't want to deal with? Is this actually like a really tense, mad, mutually assured destruction moment? Or are the Breen just terribly written?
I think it's implied kind of without the progenitors' tech, they aren't able to just murk the entire Federation. I feel like they could have done at least some damage if they like really wanted to, though. So that is a good question of like how capable are they of just the level of destruction that the threat seemed to imply without the progenitor's tech.
I think that at most we can assume that their entire empire at most has the strength of around 10 to 13 dreadnoughts, because you'd assume each one of like their 6, well, no, sorry, not 10. There'd be 6 for each of like the 6 Primarchs, and then there would be probably like a juicy one for the Emperor, and maybe like 1 to 3 for their overall military. But I think that like the Dreadnought ship is pretty intimidating. It's like a moving star base, it almost seems like. And it really made me think for the first time that Federation HQ is not really all that practical. It kind of looks like a fragile monument when put up against spacefaring vessels that are actually large. It seems like it's a fucking museum and not like a main home base that needs to have really good defenses. And I like it, don't get me wrong, but it just seems a little bit goofy when you put it up next to the Dreadnought.
I keep forgetting what Federation HQ in the Discovery timeline looks like, and every single time it pops on screen, I'm like, what is that? So
It's
swirly.
the prince.
Like, it looks like it's made of ribbons. Like, what?
Doesn't really seem like it fits a lot of people in there. Like it's the
Yeah, like
it's
where's
the
everyone
Gateway
living
Arch.
in the little ribbon sections? Like, what?
You guys know the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, how you can actually go inside it? It's a building, and it's kind of really hard to understand how you can go inside of it. And that's kind of the way how I feel about the Federation HQ. Like, I have to look at it for a second. I think there's like a central mass hub where they all chill out.
Yeah.
But are there people traveling through these? Like, why do you have the ribbons around it? What are those for?
It reminds me of the princess's palace from the Neverending Story.
Yes, that is exactly what it looks like. I was trying to place it aesthetically, and you got it. That's it.
Every time that I've seen since the beginning, the first time they showed, I'm like, oh, hey, it's the Neverending Story palace.
Turn around.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, good. It said I was muted for a second. I just want to make sure. Does anybody have like a hard time conflating with like what the newer Treks look like compared to the old Treks because of these like intense design changes? I'm not saying they shouldn't, change it and try to update it and make it look a little better, but sometimes when I look at like the alien designs compared to the old alien designs, I'm just like, how much does any species really evolve in that short amount of time, and change and become different? It's kind of what makes watching newer Trek a little harder for me.
A lot of that comes down to how doing those facial effects and makeup have changed a lot over the last 30 years. It's a lot more, I mean, it's still a pain in the ass, but it's more comfortable processes that don't take so many hours and can look a little bit better and look more, I don't know, real, I guess. So
True.
I understand why they've done it.
I think so I used to be a Discovery hater. And when I was hating on Discovery, the things I would hate on it about mostly were just the level of anachronism for how it looks. Because I feel like if you go back and you watch like Enterprise, I think they did a decent job of making the tech look older a lot of the time than, TOS tech in some ways, while still modernizing the aesthetic. And I think with Discovery, and even to an extent Strange New Worlds, it sort of feels like they didn't try enough to like get the shapes right and like the feel right to actually make the prequel parts feel like prequels. And then with the jump, I would agree that things don't advance quite as much aesthetically as you would expect them to in 800 years. And so it does kind of like, I feel like you could have made that transition so much starker if they had that like 60s Trek aesthetic and then suddenly brought it so far into the future.
Yeah, it just feels weirdly muted to me across series. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to look down on anybody working on the show in effects and costuming and what have you. I mean, very, very excellent to look at. They are very slick. They're very pleasing to the eye. I got no problem necessarily. I just wish there was a little bit more coordination in trying to tie it to that legacy, because there are just moments where it's so glaringly different, and it almost feels like a different show. And you could probably level that at the Kelvin timeline too, which I'm happy to. I get tired of that Kelvin timeline.
I think the only thing I like about the 32nd century is the technology and stuff. Like, when all else fails and there's really an episode that actually makes me upset with how bad the writing I think is, you know, how I think it is. I really do like the Federation ships. I like all the technology. I think the programmable matter is really good. And I also think it's incredibly creative how they use it. The scenes where Tilly will have a phaser in her hand and it will convert to a bracelet seamlessly. And then you could turn the Type 1 phaser into a phaser rifle just by like tapping on it like an iPhone. I think it's really great. Like, you think about how different and things look in just the last 30 years. Like, when I was a kid, I remember all the technology at school being beige and there was fax machines. We were using the projectors where you just put a piece of clear paper and you write on it. And then slowly they introduced like smart boards and everything. And now you take the first iPod and you compare it to the iPhone that just came out. It's insane how sleek things have become. And we have gone 800 years in the future. There's been a time period, it's stated, where the Federation and multiple other civilizations have harnessed the powers of gods like time and dimensional travel. So I think it's pretty good. I think that of all the things Discovery did, I like their version of the 32nd century. And the person who carries it the most, and if he wasn't there, is Admiral Vance. If Admiral Vance was not here, this show would be shit.
I really want to say I think it's one of the best looking productions I've seen on TV anywhere. Like, the integration of how they do everything and how like thick everything feels on a background level. Yeah, it's impressive.
Dustin, we can't hear you.
Cool. So, I mean, we were running over, but we got 2 episodes to talk about. And there's some more stuff we got to get in about the Breen here. This has been fun to talk about, that how the technology is advanced, and I agree, they've done a really good job with that overall. So if the Breen don't negotiate, why did they spend a lot of time negotiating in this episode?
Why do they not care that, like, their scion, their prince, their, like, the thing that's going to make somebody the heir to the throne, everybody is seeing their face? Like, we have a whole other government looking at what the Breen look like, but they're notorious for being a people that, you know, they say that people have seen the Breen, but nobody's ever lived to tell about it. And then also, there's enough scenes to suggest that, yes, people don't know what the hell they look like, because they were looking at Locke for the first 3 or 4 episodes, and Michael finally meets him and he's like, "You're a Breen?" So nobody really knows what a Breen looks like. It seems like they should have a very harsh culture in which, like, "You're not allowed to see my face." But no Breen in this episode really brought up a comment like that. They really cared way more about just Locke's fate than any of that. I felt like there should have been some grunt on the side, like, "There should not be humans in here looking at the fate of the scion, or the face of the scion."
At the very least,
he did react with some. The uncle did react with some degree of, like, disgust and horror when he exposed his face to Maul in that earlier episode. So I guess it makes sense that they didn't retread it again. But I also agree with you that it does feel like it should be a bigger deal if they've been masked to us for this long.
It's like the one thing about their species is that they're masked. They don't like being unmasked. They're like Rey Mysterio. So it should just be, you know, they should have made a comment about it.
At the same time, they already know that everybody here has now seen Locke. They know what they look like. So, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like being a Mandalorian almost. You know, that should be a code that you fight. You know,
Never
you should
take the armor off.
Like, yeah, like they should be fighting for that code. Like, they should be like doing everything they can to make sure their faces aren't being seen. If people gotta die, then that's what happens. I feel like that's a little bit of missed drama.
I was literally thinking that it should have been part of the barter process to
Oh,
be
yeah.
like that. You should be like, okay, well, you need to eliminate all records of our face being shown today in this incident, or else we're gonna blow up HQ. Like, we're really not allowed to do this. So you need to make this like a code red, put this shit in lock and key. If we catch any members of the Discovery talking about this later on, then we're going to come back and bomb you or something. It should have been important.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Okay, so I get two questions that revolve around Tarina. Was she telling a joke when she didn't use the tribble infestation as a reason to stall the Breen?
I think so.
I don't remember that part.
And it would be the second time this season that she's done something seemingly as a joke. The first time was like in that the first episode when she's like to Saru, like, "Oh, I do I have to mind meld with you to get it out?" It's like, oh, well, she's got a sense of humor, which is kind of weird.
Is
Not
she
the
not a
first time we've
purebred
seen
Vulcan?
Vulcan.
Is she a Navarian? Like, she's half Romulan.
Yeah, who
is
knows?
she?
That's a good
also-
question.
We've seen Vulcans be a little bit playful before. Like, we've definitely seen it with Spock, especially in TOS. Like, when he's like owned Kirk a little and he has that little self-satisfied look, he knows what he's doing. Or Tuvok is downright sassy, like in Voyager sometimes. Like, he knows what he's doing. Like, I think Vulcans are interesting. It's just like when they're like, Vulcans don't lie. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. You know? Like, yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because it sort of shows like they do suppress their emotions, but like they still do feel something.
Vulcans are self-hating nerds, so all their humor is very dry and very low-cut because they don't want to appear as if they're making a big fuss or they're doing something that could be made fun of later. So everything they do is like real sly.
Also, like, T'Pring's dad had a little bit of personality too, with his like enthusiasm over the food.
That was something that I had noticed too, and I was like, wow, that he is like the most animate, like full-blooded Vulcan I think we've ever seen.
He was so just genial. Like, what a good little buddy.
I think I've talked about this before on Buffer Time, but Vulcans are really like any society where we really only get that reflection of pompous Vulcans, you know, the ones who truly try to stay 100% to the Vulcan way as kind of a form of social status, because we're always around the highest ranking Vulcans, like the ones that travel out into space, interact with Starfleet Spock. And we also get so many scenes from the most pompous Vulcans in the entire galaxy, the Science Academy. Like, everybody there is dicks. They're all mean. And so, yeah, I think Vulcans are perfectly capable of just telling jokes and stuff.
For guys who suppress their emotions, they sure like to bully people, like explicitly bully them. Like, they're quite rude and they know when they're being rude. It's not an accident when they're being rude. I think they also do something kind of similar to like, it's kind of how the Klingons are with honor. Like, on paper, honor is a big deal, but like, we've sure seen a lot of Klingons do things that are not super honorable.
For some Klingons, it's honorable just to
like
run a food stand. Like, we need Klingons to dish out the worms. Do you know what I mean? Like, not every Klingon is out battling for his life. It's
right,
honorable
but
just
even
to do
most of the Klingons that we've seen that are out battling for their life don't do super honorable things while they're doing it.
Like, we've got the Durases of the world.
They made comments about that too in like Deep Space Nine, how like their pursuit of honor oftentimes leads them to do dishonorable stuff.
It's a society built on a lie.
One of my favorite takes on Worf is that the reason that Worf kind of like warps our perception of how honorable Klingons are is because Worf was raised outside his culture. He like values that culture so much more than Klingons who were raised in that culture because he views himself as being outside of it. So he tries to live up to Klingon ideals in a way that Klingons who were raised on Kronos like wouldn't feel the same pressure to. And I'm like, oh,
right. Most of what he
sense.
knows is he's read in books rather than being exposed to.
they're like these Mormon guys I know who got into it in their 20s, whereas all the Mormon kids that grew up with this bull crap, just, they don't care. They don't think, they do it because their families are part of the Mormon church,
Right.
and it's like, okay, we'll do as little as possible and that'll satiate them. But no, Worf is definitely a late convert.
All right. Yeah, we're way over. We're way outside here. The other more serious question I had about Tarina, how do you feel about the good of the many rationale as to giving Maul over to the Breen at the end?
I mean, I do think it's fairly consistent with Trek generally, and also it's not like Maul has done them any favors. Like, had she not agreed to this botched escape attempt, Locke wouldn't have died.
Well, Locke didn't give her a lot of choice. He didn't even tell her what he was going to do, just that she wouldn't like it.
I think she could have stopped him. I think she could have. She definitely seemed to wear the pants in that relationship in terms of, like, who was calling the shots. Like, Locke was pretty deferential to her. I think if she had insisted that he not do anything and that he stay and let them treat him, he would have done it.
I don't even remember the question. I just think this is I think this is the best Tarina episode. Like, I know Dustin doesn't like this episode so much for what happened with the Breen, but I think this is the best Tarina episode I've ever seen. She was a baller.
Maybe. I did like that, but I also feel like that goes back to something we've been talking about this whole this episode, that, like, so many people this season aren't here. Where's Rillick? We've seen her for one scene this whole season.
They can't afford her. They can't afford Rillick.
I think that's it.
They just have to talk about her character. She's at a conference right now. She can't be here.
Can I take a message?
Does
That's
anyone?
definitely a high stakes situation. You'd think she'd be there. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, does anyone feel like Maul being given away kind of just seems like a season compromise? Like they had a longer season, and then they kind of have to push things forward a little bit in a way that maybe isn't satisfying or interesting in the way it could be.
Man, I don't know what the fuck's going on with them, honestly. Like, I have no idea. I wish I could understand what's going on behind the scenes. I feel like Discovery really is only going to be a good show if you maybe binge it all in a couple sittings. But this episode to episode, like when I have to watch episode to episode, it's not too great. It's not too fun.
I agree. And season 2 of Picard was like that for me. When I first saw it and it came out, it's like, wow, well, this was a disappointment. And I've seen it a few times since binging it, and I really like that season. I know we're going to talk about that at some point, Gannon. Yeah.
Oh, I was actually kind of liked it as it was coming out more than most people. I really kind of liked a handful of things they did in the season. It's just you get to that 7th or 8th episode with the investigator where you're like, oh my God, whoever wrote this is on crack.
Yes,
Why did they make this episode? This is the worst thing I've ever watched. This like drops all standards in every category imaginable, is when they did that investigator episode towards the end. That was terrible.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think
pretty good. I actually liked a lot of season 2 better than season 3. Like, people are mad at me about it, but I did.
I'm with you.
I liked young hot Gannon. She was dope.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes.
Season 2 has a problem for me where I think it's like it's not a comedy, but functions like a lot of comedies where it's a series of moments and it's not actually put together as a full story in the way it should be.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it was missing sort of a flow and sense of connective tissue for sure.
Oh,
but I feel like that about the whole of Picard, I'm not gonna lie.
Ooh, Norman.
Yeah. Oh man.
Those fighting words, buddy.
Oh, snap.
I mean, it's okay. I do kind of understand it because I felt that way when I first watched it. But the more I watch it, the more I realize I like it. But like Robbie said, it's mostly that it has some amazing scenes. It has some of Trek's best scenes, but complete episodes it starts to fall short on.
I really hate everything about season 1, I think, except that I weirdly really like Data's death. I
Oh, yeah, that
really
was
enjoyed
really
it.
well done.
Like, I
agree.
loved it. And also, I am
Again?
not mad. I think I actually like the death of Data and then his revival in his new self combined with his brother, how they're able to maybe finally coexist in a galaxy. And one
I
doesn't
do
have to be
admit-
constantly turned off.
I know there's no way around it because Brent Spiner is a human being who ages, but part of me can't get over how many times in TNG they reference that he will not age or die, and then they have him looking very old, like very old, and the flimsiest reason for it. I'm just like, I don't know, this may be one of those cases where like digitally aging him down would have been fine.
We don't have enough money.
That's true.
All right. So speaking
kind-
of deaths, the final question I have is, how do you think Locke's death will affect Maul going forward?
This is the
Oh, he's
only
gonna be
way
so reckless.
we were actually going to get a villain this series, because if you've been watching this entire season, they're not real villains. In fact, they're not menacing. They're actually just couriers who are, unfortunately, have chosen Starfleet as an enemy on their latest expedition. Like, this is what they've been doing, like, all the time. It's not necessarily their plan to hurt anybody. It's their plan to help themselves. So this is the turning point. Like, she's going to think, or he may be dead. I think he's not. She's going to think that her entire reason for doing everything up until this point was for Locke and her to just get away together. And now we're finally going to have a real villain. This is going to be her turning point, which I think I liked. That was like one of the parts of the episode I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Because when you consider previous villains like Tarka, who just came out of fucking nowhere, and then also Osira, who she's whatever. She's like a big bad Jolly Green Giant. I don't know what to say. But I liked it. I thought this was the only way that we were actually going to get a true villain. I know that not every Discovery season really needs that, and a lot of people will say that maybe that makes it worse. But yeah, I think that's what we got. We got a villain.
I just want to say I kind of prefer having like a possibility of a villain, because this whole puzzle like case we're doing, it's not doing a lot for me, because I don't really care how powerful this progenitor technology is when it's so thinly sketched out, and it's supposed to replace all the spore drive stuff. And I don't know, it just doesn't really have anything tying it together for me in a way that makes it relevant. And if we have a villain that this creates out of this, then that gives it greater personal stakes.
I knew one of them was gonna die. I knew it. Their relationship was just way too idyllic. I knew for sure one of them was gonna die. I do think Locke is genuinely dead for now. I think by the end of the series, he will be back via the progenitor's tech somehow. In fact, I bet Starfleet's somehow going to make a deal, like bargain with her to bring him back or something. If they don't bring him back, I think what's going to happen is she's going to go to the very edge, and then Book is going to talk her down and basically be like, Locke wouldn't have wanted this for you. And she'll like get her little redemption arc in that. I think that's the two directions that it's probably going to go with Maul, is either we get Locke back or Maul learns to value other things in her life besides him, which is very sad, and I will cry. I do think it's interesting how it changes things with the Breen, and I loved how they built up that like little negotiated house of cards, and then the base of it was just like swiped right out from under them, and now they're just kind of back to square one with the Breen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
I still don't feel like the Breen are savage enough, you know. Like I don't think they've developed into etiquette, you know, like in this amount of time. Like I still feel like they would just rather kill off whatever they could and then take their prize. That's a big problem with me.
When they came to sickbay, I thought they were coming there to kidnap Locke. Like that's what I thought was going to happen, is there was going to be like some kind of, you know, squabble over him, and if he died, he like gotten shot in the crossfire or something. But yeah, the direction they went with it was interesting, and the fact that the Breen just in both of those instances were in those spaces with the humans and with the Federation, and like no one dies, not one shot fired. Really?
Not yet, anyway. I just
Frustrating.
wanted to. I've been leaving Norman's comment up here just so I can go on a quick tangent. I don't think Maul's hair is that bad, but what I want to say is that it's definitely not the worst white-haired wig we've ever seen in Trek. That dishonor goes to Majel Barrett, first time we see Nurse Chapel in The Naked Now. Or The Naked Time. It's terrible. I don't know who thought that wig was okay on such a lovely woman as Majel Barrett.
I think
That's
she
a
was
terrible.
bit
That's a terrible
confused,
name. That was anything but. I'm so sorry, Gannon. I just want to say that's a terrible name. That was anything but a naked time. People were clothed that whole time. Her hair was covered, with a wig. It was not a naked time.
George Takei was half naked.
And looking good he was.
Indeed. Oh my god, the beehive.
Yeah, this is the worst, maybe just the worst wig period in Star Trek. Definitely the worst white-haired wig.
I miss a Trek when everybody looks like they're in their 50s. Like,
I
a bit more of that energy
love-
going on.
So good.
I love when Star Trek does old person makeup on people, because looking at Picard's old man makeup versus like how Patrick Stewart aged is just never not funny. It's like one looks like
Yeah.
the character, one just looks like Patrick Stewart.
Although what I think is worse is when they tried to de-age him in there's this one scene in Bev's mind where she's going back to when Jack died.
Yeah.
And he put on that hairpiece he's known for wearing at the time and called it him younger.
It's like Kevin Spacey playing Bobby Darin, okay? It feels that silly.
Nothing will ever beat them just simply putting a mustache on William Shatner and making it his brother on the floor.
Make it his brother, yes.
Nothing will ever beat Sam. I have to leave and go to work, but I want to say one final thing is that I was really trying to be open about it, but I think that the whole idea of having the progenitors tech even be the central focus of the season might be flawed if you know about the broader spectrum of Star Trek. For instance, the progenitors technology is not that complicated when you literally, it's been confirmed in that one episode where Captain Picard, I think it might be Tapestry. No, it's not. It's the final episode. It's all good things end.
All good things?
Yeah,
All
where
good things.
Q literally shows him that the beginning of mankind, it's proven, is just simple protein molecules, which I feel like would be a simple thing to do for maybe even today's scientists to generate random protein molecules. I feel like the craziest thing about the technology might be the terraforming aspect of preparing a planet for the molecules, are the proteins, the building blocks of life. I don't think the progenitors technology is going to be consistent with canon when they finally reveal it. I do not know how it could be turned into a weapon. And at this point in the timeline, we've also learned multiple instances that the most dangerous life-creating experimental weapon that's shown up in Star Trek is Genesis device. And we've seen the Genesis device sold on the Ferengi black market in lower decks and stuff like that. So they'll always create this larger than life experimental technology that, can bring Spock back to life and can reanimate living tissue. But I just don't think it's going to be congruent with canon when they reveal at the end of the season. That's all I'm saying.
Extra funny.
Gannon, before you get out of here, give me your out of 10.
Okay,
we can move on.
For Erigah, I think my initial jaded review was a 7. And I think that the reason I gave it that high was just because I really liked seeing the Breen and the Dreadnought so much, and the past episodes were so terrible that I was finally getting some action and some real plot. I'll give it a 6 because it's flawed.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
All right, y'all have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Gannon.
See ya, Gannon.
You were trying to say something, Ren.
Oh yeah, so just I agree with that, with what Gannon said, because in the chase, they built up the progenitors tech. Everyone thought it was a weapon, which is why they were all scrambling to try and get it. And then once it was revealed, everyone was just like, well. And then they left. That was it. the reaction once they discovered what the technology actually was just disappointment. The Romulans were like, eh. The Cardassians were like, eh. The only ones who had any like real wonder beyond the first couple minutes was the Federation, and like there was no mention of it being turned into a weapon or having that capability like whatsoever. Like they've kind of justified it in Disco, but like it does feel like a retcon for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say rebutting to what Gannon said was that no, it's not just because you have building blocks that are just fucking goo doesn't mean that you go from that to being able to seed all life on a planet for the next couple billion years to have code that's stable and works. So there is a lot more science and deeper stuff to that. And yeah, like we were talking about the Genesis device, if it's put into something like a Genesis device where you're overwriting the codes or things that are already on a planet, that could be pretty destructive and problematic.
I don't know. I feel like so much of this season is just busy work to keep people going from one point A to one point B after another. I never feel like I have a genuine grasp on what the progenitor's technology is supposed to be doing and like how it's supposed to help them, if it's more powerful than the spore drive and all this stuff. And Locke and Maul feel like such underwritten characters. Like they have such flavorless personalities that I don't care like if they get their hands on the progenitor's technology or not. And after hearing him talk about what we already know about progenitor tech and progenitor history, yeah, it feels like such an underwhelming season to be such an underwhelming thing to base your season around.
Fair. All right, before we finish up our out of 10s, I just want to quickly answer that question that I'd put on screen from Norman. Maul, all day. Tark is the worst written character in all Star Trek for me. I hate him.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I also found Tarka honestly to be a bit forgettable. Like I had to go back and like watch recaps to really remember much about him. No, I actually like Maul. I think she's kind of interesting in terms of forming this connection with this totally alien species and then just prioritizing that relationship above all else because she doesn't have anything else. I don't know. I find it touching. Like the stuff with her in Book is really interesting, how her father wasn't a father to her but was a father to Book. Like I just wish we had more time to explore that, I think, is my thing with Maul. Because she's got a really interesting kind of like broken backstory, and if we had more time to like see her maybe heal that a little bit, I think that could have been an amazing character.
I kind of like Maul. Tark just doesn't have anything for himself, but I like the idea that Maul is essentially one of the first interspecies relationship havers with the Breen, from all we know. I think you can do cool stuff with that. I kind of like her bad wig on a certain level. It reminds me a lot of the Riot Girls I've had in my life. So she got that going for her. Yeah, I still think they're underserving these characters, but they have the potential to be interesting. And now if they do turn her into an antagonist, that might lead to some interesting dialogue that could reveal good character. So there's potential there. I do kind of like her interactions with the crew a little bit.
Cool. All right, let's finish up these out of 10s. I, much like Gannon, am going to give this a 6. It's better than the last couple that we've talked about. I kind of dig the like Federation HQ, Star Wars Senate kind of thing that's going on in this. But it definitely had some problems and shortcomings, but it's enjoyable. I would definitely come back and watch this before fucking Whistle Speak any day.
Yeah, I would probably give it a 7. It was pretty good. I I didn't cry when Locke died, which for me is kind of a litmus test for like how much an episode impacts me. Is if like, you know, if I feel like I should have cried. I feel like I should have cared a little bit more. So that's kind of what keeps it from getting higher rankings from me. But a lot of the stuff with the Breen was really interesting. I liked the negotiations despite the Breen claiming they don't. Torino was on fire in this episode. So yeah, 7. It was pretty good.
I think I'm going to give it a 7, but I think that's mostly for entertainment. I don't think it's necessarily satisfying in like creating a continuation of ideas that have been previously established in Trek. I don't think it necessarily creates any massive gains on a social level, you know, a social commentary or anything like that. But I think as an episode of Discovery, you know, it kind of fills in the boxes in a way that are more that are somewhat satisfying. I've been trying to catch up on Discovery, all of it. I'm mostly through season 4, and I think the show has inherent writing flaws all the time that prevent me from enjoying it more, and it's really been not connecting with me in the way I would hope after I've given it all this time, and I feel like the season is kind of on a downhill slide to be a little bit of a disappointment by the time of the finale. But this was serviceable. Everyone was putting in good work. Yeah, I think it earned 7.
Yep. All right. Well, that's an average 6.4 for this one, and it was a 4.14 for Whistle Speak. So, 3 more episodes to come in the season. If Disco holds true, the next one will probably be about on par with this one, and then it'll get really good in the last 2.
Fingers crossed.
Hopefully. Is it not this next one, but the one after, directed by Jonathan Frakes, so that is usually a treat.
He does his homework most of the time.
Yeah, there's really... I don't think he's ever had like a bomb of an episode as a director. But I'm really curious. After all the great stuff he's done, he says that in Strange New Worlds this coming next season, next year, he directs one that is the best thing he's ever directed. And that's a lot because he's directed some amazing Trek.
Cool. Yeah.
So, yeah. We'll come back next week. Probably we will talk about some more. Thank you guys, my co-hosts, for joining in, and Gannon for coming for a while. And you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you next week. Till then, live long